Welcome to Live with Marketers, our award-winning LinkedIn Live broadcast series exploring industry trends and future forward views of the marketing landscape with some of the brightest minds in the B2B arena. I'm your host, Alex Rinn, Senior Content Marketing Manager at LinkedIn, and I'm excited to be broadcasting to you today from San Francisco. Thank you for joining today's episode, which takes a look ahead at what's next for B2B marketing. Trends, predictions, lessons we've learned from 2020, what to leave behind, and what to bring with us. We're going to share data points from a recent LinkedIn survey of more than 10,000 marketing decision makers, as well as some third-party reports such as the annual Content Marketing Institute's B2B Content Marketing Trends for 2021 report. A couple of last-minute housekeeping notes before I introduce our guests. We will save around 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, so please be sure to submit your questions and we will try to get to as many as we can at the end. And then if you're joining via Slido, we have a super short survey at the end that we'd really appreciate if you filled out. We're always looking to improve and ensure that we're hosting the most meaningful conversations that matter most to your business. Now it's time to introduce our guests. Today I have Shawna Heider and Brittany Blanchard. I would love for both of you to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit more about your role, what you do, and as is custom here at LinkedIn, share something that is not on your LinkedIn profile. So Brittany, let's begin with you.
Absolutely, thanks Alex. Excited to be here today. My name is Brittany Blanchard. I'm VP of Account Services with Metric Theory, an independent performance marketing agency with offices all over the US when there were such a thing as offices. I myself am based in Denver. And Metric Theory builds advertising programs that help our clients acquire new customers, both B2B and B2C. And I'm overseeing several of our units, both paid search and paid social. My personal experience has skewed toward B2B advertisers, where I've had the pleasure of working directly with some of our largest B2B software and SaaS clients. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I'm also a mom to 2 boys under the age of 3. So that's why I'm sequestered in my basement. And if you hear any screaming, that's just a sneak peek into my life.
Well, props to you. That's got to be really wild, especially right now with everyone at home.
Absolutely.
Dama, over to you.
Hey, Alex. Brittany, that was interesting. I didn't know. I learned something about you in that little snippet. So I'll actually reverse that question and answer it. So, Brittany, I have a 16-month-old and a little guy, and I'm expecting a daughter. So we're going to be very much in the same boat very soon. So not something that you'll probably find on my LinkedIn profile. For everyone else who may not know me, my name is Shawna Heider. I'm founder and CEO of Zen Media. We're a B2B tech PR and marketing firm specialized in earned media, shared, owned. B2B is my passion. I love it. I'm so excited for what's on the horizon for all of you B2B marketers, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for being here. I don't have anything quite as significant that's not on my LinkedIn profile. However, I am expecting a puppy in March. So coming March 2021, a little yellow lab will enter my life. So not quite as big.
Cheers to you, Alex.
What did you say?
Cheers to you.
Oh, cheers to you. Cheers.
Bonus points if you can identify that puppy, by the way, and people can leave their comments. But
that puppy on your mug?
Yeah, we'll share it at the end of the conversation.
Okay, all right, share it at the end.
Okay,
I don't know
cool.
what it is.
We'll keep some mystery going.
Okay, we'll keep live stream. All right, so there's no easy transition from all of that, but I did just want to make a note that this year has obviously been incredibly difficult for so many reasons, and as marketers, we're all wondering what the new normal will be, and the truth is that no one knows. What can we do in lieu of that? We can flex our resilience muscle so we're ready to adapt for what comes next. And if we know one thing about marketers is that we are very resilient creatures. Most of us as marketers have met the challenges of the pandemic head on. We're adapting quickly, and we believe in the content, the value that our content provides. So with all that being said, we'd like to kick off the episode by learning a little bit more about you, our audience. So let's begin with a question about what your priorities will be moving forward. So the question is, what are your top 2021 priorities? A, account-based marketing. B, online events and broadcasts. C, SEO and web development. D, better measurement and ROI. Or E, it can be completely something different. We'll take a couple seconds to let you respond. In the meantime, Shawna, Brittany, do we have any predictions here? Obviously, online events have exploded this year, but is there anything else that you would expect to be a priority in the next year?
I would love to see better measurement of ROI under my Christmas tree this year. That would be the greatest gift. I feel like that would answer a lot of questions, but then maybe I wouldn't have as many exciting conversations with advertisers if we just had an easy answer there.
So I think it's a challenge and an opportunity in 2021 for B2B marketers across the board. And so the challenge really, I think, becomes that it gets even harder, right, to get attention, to get in front of your audience. I think we'll actually see fewer sales calls, fewer sales meetings as people pull back and say, I've got to prioritize my time. We've already sort of started seeing that. I think the opportunity there is then to make every interaction count. It's to make sure that every engagement someone has with your brand, now whether it's direct with a salesperson or way before, is a solid one. So I think that's what really raises the bar in 2021 for B2B marketers.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm taking a look at the results right now, and it looks like better ROI measurement is number one, but SEO and web development is a really super close second. And yeah, no shocker there. Better measurement of ROI is something like Brittany mentioned. We could just package it up and put it under a tree. It will solve a lot of problems for a lot of marketers.
You know what, Alex, I find a little ironic about the whole, like, let's measure the heck out of this,
Yeah.
is that it's funny because the more you chase that measurement number, right, the more it's like, no, everything needs to be measured and everything needs to be quantified, the more you actually lose efficiency and effectiveness. So, and this isn't to say that numbers don't matter or there's not some great ways to better quantify, right, your ROI. I mean, we work in earned media, which is often, which is historically difficult to then connect to sort of bottom line numbers, but we can get into the share of voice and all the different metrics in there. But I do think it's important as 2021 begins and as marketers are here to kind of step back and say, okay, what if that was not my sole focus, right? What if that was not like what I built everything around? And so I think there's some opportunity there perhaps to revisit that a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know it's something that I think we'll talk about a little bit later in the conversation too, but I do think that marketers are measuring too early, and it's because they just feel the pressure from their boss, their CMO, their CFO in order to prove value very, very quickly. But we know that through this pandemic, benchmarks and metrics have changed. And also it's, for marketers that are building their brand, they're probably creating a lot of top of the funnel content, which that CPL isn't necessarily like the goal of a lot of that content. So anyway, yeah, very, very interesting conversation. I'm glad you brought that up, and I look forward to talking about that a little bit more. as we dig into the conversation a little bit more. So first, I wanted to talk about 2020, our favorite topic. No. So a recent LinkedIn study of over 10,000 global marketing decision makers revealed that 3 out of 5 marketers don't feel like experts in digital marketing. I wanted to explore why we think this is. It could be access to data, it could be measuring ROI, it could be maybe they don't feel like they have a full funnel strategy in place. So Shawna, let's start with you. Let's talk about why we think that might be.
So I think this was fascinating is if you ask people define digital marketing, right, you get like a million different answers. So I think part of it is honestly semantics. Now, I think if you ask marketers, how comfortable do you feel marketing in the digital age, you might get a different answer. Also, digital marketing changes so fast, right? Like what is digital marketing? I almost use it as slang for like current state of how you meet your customers, where they are and how they're buying. Like what's that intersection look like? So yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I think people are generally shy of the term expert, and it kind of puts people a little off to be like, do I feel like I know everything? And I don't think that's even possible with digital because it's changing so fast. So I think the question might be slightly skewed a little bit.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Brittany, what about you?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think my first reaction is, well, digital is a complex ecosystem, right? There's a lot of platforms that are considered digital. So I think a lot of people maybe feel pretty solid in certain aspects of digital, but there are others that they don't know about. So again, it is hard to feel like an expert. I think one of the other things that plays in here that's a little bit interesting is that people believe that digital marketing is performance marketing and traditional marketing is brand. So, things like trade shows or radio or TV, and people seem to feel a lot more comfortable with more traditional marketing. And so I think the data access is intimidating, and that question we were talking about with measurability and how do I understand the true impact of my top of funnel digital efforts, it's really intimidating to a lot of marketers. And I think also there's a challenge there where they're being measured on short-term results when trying to drive long-term growth. So there's just a lot of aspects coming into play in digital.
Yeah, I love both of those answers. I definitely think it's incredibly difficult to feel as though you're an expert with something that's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And then I'm so glad, Brittany, that you brought up performance marketing versus brand marketing, that it shouldn't be like a versus conversation. And I also feel like performance marketing is almost like the whole notion of it needs to be like laid to rest, because when I think of performance marketing, I think of like someone just trying so hard to like push the product, and those those cold calls that you get, those emails that you get out of nowhere with someone that's trying to sell you something without actually building a relationship. So yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up that comparison. Now, according to a recent Content Marketing Institute study, 94% of content marketers changed their strategy because of the pandemic. Among the top content marketing changes B2B orgs made in response to the pandemic were: 1, they changed their targeting and their messaging strategy. 2, they adjusted their editorial calendar. And 3, they changed their content distribution and promotion strategy. So none of these should come as huge shocks to anyone that's on the line that has experience in B2B marketing. But what are perhaps maybe some of the less obvious adjustments that marketers made? And Brittany, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that has actually been a really positive outcome is that you're seeing sales and marketing teams communicating more. I think when deals are fewer and further between, it's really important that everyone is laser focused on a single goal and communicating with each other a lot. I think when things are booming and times are good, sales and marketing can really operate fairly independently and still be closing deals and bringing in new customers. But I think what we've seen in 2020 is that we really need to get more aligned with sales and marketing. And I think that's really important and opens up a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. And Shawna, what about yourself?
So one of the things that I think when we started, right, when everything kind of hit in March, was that there were companies freaking out because they thought, oh my God, a trade show, right? Not having the traditional trade show to go to get some of those leads and being able to depend on that. And what's fascinating is when you dig a little bit deeper, and I started asking these questions and said, well, so historically, why have you attended these trade shows? What do you get? And if you dig, it's like, oh, wait a second, why? Like, we've always done this. We've always gotten there. This is, we always publish these white papers. We always do this sort of thing. So I do think one of the most subtle shifts has happened was people questioning, right? Marketers questioning, rightly so, why are we doing this? And I hope that we keep asking that question, because I think that answer will lead to more effective, efficient ways to stand out. I also think what's fascinating is, Forrester's done all this research, and they found that 64% of people, of B2B buyers, are already through the buying process before they ever reach out to a salesperson. So to Brittany's point, that becomes really important for marketing and sales to be cohesive together. And yet you have to realize that, people are coming in, like, it used to be that sales used to be the first stop, right? Like, people came to your company to understand what you have to offer. Now they already kind of know. You already have a reputation in the field. If you've done it right, it precedes you and it's positive, and people seek you out. They want to work with you. So I think there's a lot of power in the idea of building thought leadership. And that's another subtle shift we saw, where people got serious about, hey, how do we put our leadership out there? We're doing these interesting things. How do we better tell this story? And I hope that B2B marketers do more of that branded storytelling, and we can get into some of the case studies out there. But I think that's where we're all going to see better ROI in 2021 from it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think I love the notion of marketers needing to ask themselves more, like, why are we doing this? I think a little self-examination is healthy in both your professional and probably your personal life as well. And you're right, sales, they're not the front line anymore. It's more so, it's all of your content marketing. It's your social channels. It's your blog. It's the leaders of your company coming out and sharing what their thoughts are, and really showing the mission and the vision behind your brand. So all those things, definitely, I think we'll see even more of that developing in the following year. Let's talk about our main takeaways of what we learned in 2020. So what do you think are some of the most important lessons that we learned that we should definitely take with us into the new year?
I think I'll build off of what Shawna was just saying about content and about sales not being the first stop for a potential customer interacting with your brand. I think what we've learned is kind of borrowing some lessons from B2C and e-commerce, where they've known for a long time that creative is very important in engaging with their customers. And I think B2B advertisers have been a little bit slower to invest in creative and really tailor creative to the different audiences that they're targeting. And so I think I saw a lot of advertisers get smarter with limited budgets in 2020 and really start to invest in their content and creative strategy in thinking about, what does this person care about? Where are they at in the potential funnel? And how can I show them how my brand can help solve their problems? That's not going to be a free demo offer. You don't necessarily want to just push a free demo offer all over social media, all over your paid search landing pages. And I think that's going to be a lesson that we take into 2021 in really starting to focus more on content and creative.
To Brittany's point, I think one of the lessons I hope that we carry throughout is that, to take from B2C, you take from D2C brands. And I love studying these brands because I think it's fascinating. I feel like sometimes B2B is in such a little silo, or like it's an echo chamber, that being able to look at different examples from brands and saying, what are they doing well? How can we learn from this? Informs us. And I think what 2020 did was really force us to think outside our box, right? Like, okay, so we don't have the traditional trade show. We can't do these traditional things. So whereas B2C, for example, and we can get more into this, Alex, is, has embraced influencer marketing for, I don't know, like more than 15 years now, like right from the advent of Instagram, you really saw in 2020 more brands, B2B brands, start looking into influencer marketing and say, okay, how can we leverage this? What does this look like for our industry? And I think that I hope that continues, where we continue to push the envelope. We don't settle for, performance-based or ABM because it's working just enough, right? Like, we don't look at the overall cost of what's actually costing us, but it's working and it's measurable, so we continue to do it. But it's such a folly because, there's so much out there that could work better. That is, one of the things that I'm really excited about in 2021 is I hope that we embrace what I call like that messy middle, right? Google did this study, and I thought this was fascinating, where we always look at that buyer journey as circular or in a funnel. But what you forget is there's this outer layer, right, outside these concentric circles or funnels. And that's this sort of what we call the messy middle, where it's the constant seeing of the brand. It's that, oh my God, you guys are everywhere, right? It's a difference between someone hanging up on the salesperson and going, yeah, wait, I've heard of you guys, tell me more. Like that, I hope that we embrace that and we hang on to it and we leverage it, because this is how decisions are going to get made more and more, right? Especially because there's not that official water cooler is now gone. Like that physical water cooler is gone. There's a hybrid version. There's some other version. And so, yeah, I mean, I really am hopeful for 2021, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I love that what you said about marketers, that they stay with what works, just enough. And I think that marketers have been doing this a long time because maybe the reason that they have been doing this for so long is that they're scared of failure. They're scared of the messy middle. And I mean, at LinkedIn, we kind of foster this notion of failing forward, and you don't know until you try it. So I get that the messy middle can be a scary notion, but I do think that it can help propel your marketing way past beyond like this is just enough. Like this is like just kind of working.
And you know what was amazing about 2020 that I saw across the board with our clients? More CMOs, more marketers were invited to the C-suite table than before, right? Where it's like, and historically, CMOs, marketers, they've been sort of pushed aside because it's not the numbers. It's not, it is that messy middle. And frankly, that's scary for a lot of people. It is a rare marketer that combines the creative and the analytics. And I hope that in 2021, that continues. And if it doesn't, I hope that you pull your chair up to that table, right? Like part of this is making sure that you are working with leadership, forward-thinking leadership that understands and gives you the bandwidth to do that. Now, I know it's really hard for a marketer to be able to get away with that if you're kind of in rapid revenue recovery, right? Like you've got to get those numbers up. So then it's like, no, it's a numbers game. But once you have that baseline, once you establish that trust, I really think it's important. And I feel like companies are going to lose amazing marketers with great ideas if they don't allow them to indulge in these things, to be able to be creative, because it hurts the company, but it also at the end of the day hurts the leadership. It hurts, right? There's this sort of like waterfall trickle down effect. So I really hope in 2021 marketers are more vocal, with their CEOs, with their leadership about the things they want to try. And you don't have to go all crazy on it, but even pilot programs, right? Like you mentioned, now, like the stuff that you guys are doing at LinkedIn. But I do think it'll take a little bit more of standing up and speaking up, rather than sitting back or sitting in the corner and saying, okay, well, let me know what numbers you want me to hit, and I'll go back to the team and see what I can do. So I do think it takes a more proactive role now, and it takes courage. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I do think it's going to be worth it.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. All right, so let's talk about what practices marketers should leave behind in 2020. Brittany, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think this is kind of related to what Shawna was just talking about, which I absolutely loved, around marketers being courageous, because I think, a lot of times in my experience working with our clients, it's not the marketing team or the CMO that says you need to hit this ROI number, right? I think that's usually coming from finance or coming from someone else that maybe doesn't understand the full ecosystem of marketing and the way we're trying to interact with customers. So I think one of the practices to leave behind, or I'd like to see us move away from, is this obsession with performance marketing. And I think sometimes the data that is available to us in digital channels is a little bit of a crutch, in that people will over rely on the numbers that they can see and forget about the impact that you can't see. There is a common saying in statistics that I love to bring up whenever I'm talking about attribution, which is that all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I think that help a lot of marketers when trying to explain, to other leaders in the company, we don't have this attribution figured out perfectly, right? But no matter what model we come up with, it's not going to be correct, because there's no such thing as correct attribution. But what we know is that if we continue to only invest in the channels that have the lowest cost per lead, the highest ROI on what we can measure, over time, you're going to stymie the growth of the company. We know we need to invest in awareness. We need to invest in top of funnel. But if you are singularly focused on those metrics, you're not going to be doing that as effectively as you could be.
Look, every company has a different risk threshold, right? Every marketer has their, and I feel like marketers generally have a higher risk threshold because part of it is you are being creative. You need to get your message out there. You've got to be heard. And so sometimes these things can be a little counterintuitive. One of the things that I feel like is the greatest challenge for marketers, and has been and will continue to be, is that you almost have to do dual marketing, right? There's the external marketing, which you're trying to get customers and you get your clients on board and whatnot and prospects, but there's also internal marketing, being able to sell your ideas. And I do feel like from, just from an agency perspective, from running an agency, I think you have to be able to help your clients be able to convey that, right? Help them make that case. And so I'll give you an example. We had a client this year who really wanted to work with us, was very excited, wanted to try earned media. A company had never done anything like it before, very, very old school. And so, but, worked with us and said, okay, what can we do? What can I show our CEO? Like, what can I give our leadership that satiates their sense of like, okay, we know this is progress and we're getting to kind of open these doors and try these things out. So we looked at share of voice. We looked at how many branded searches are going up, because I do think that's a great metric. I mean, one of the things that you asked Alex earlier was how many people, SEO, web development. Yeah, I mean, hands down, B2B SEO, it's super solid. I mean, there's great ways to leverage that. So, but branded searches, I think, will continue to go up. And if they are, then that's a great metric, because that tells you that people are seeking you out, your company out. There's power there. Now you say, okay, power to the what degree? Or, the number of media things that you're mentioned in, right? So the first time that this company working with their CEO got a profile in Forbes, they got all these messages on LinkedIn from customers who said they saw that and were like, that's so cool. We're expanding, it's being top of mind. And so part of it is being able to tell that story and also sell it internally. And I do think that's a certain responsibility on all the vendors, on all agencies, and everybody that supports, right, brand marketers and CMOs, to be able to help them do that. So I do think it's a joint effort. I don't think it's just a have some courage and go in there, lion, right? I think we've got to be able to work together here to prove some of these things and to not expect it to be completely black and white either.
Right. How about some of the best of B2B brands in this past year, or the best campaigns you saw? And then maybe alternatively, if it wasn't B2B, what about, some of the best B2C campaigns you saw, and potentially what B2B can learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, I can mention one thing that I loved this year was Square had a series, Square Stories, where they had really authentic communication around some of their customers, small businesses who were talking about their resiliency through 2020, and really offered a platform to help inspire others through a tough time. I think that was a fantastic example of really highlighting the people that are using your product and providing that platform for others. I think Metric Theory also did a really nice marketing through uncertainty series, and one of our clients, Five9, was highlighted there for the human focus of their marketing. And I think that's another thing that I think we can take from 2020 is it may be B2B marketing, but it's still human to human marketing. It's human to human interaction, and we need to really double down on that human aspect when we're thinking about how we interact with customers.
Oh, this is such a fun question. Oh my goodness. 2020 is probably some of my favorite campaigns. Some of my favorite things came out of this year. Because to Brittany's point, it is human to human. And when you tap into that and you say, how can I look beyond, again, what we're doing? Forget that. This is the audience I want to reach. How do we do this? Right? Like blank slate. And so one of our clients, closed a great Series A. They're a guest technology company for the restaurant industry. So you can only imagine, right? 2020 should have looking at the industry, decimated them, and in fact did the complete opposite because they doubled down. They said, I remember getting the call from the CEO at 11 o'clock at night when they announced all the restaurant shutdowns. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be one of those walk him off the ledge calls, where you're like, okay, it'll be okay. And it was quite the opposite, because we get on the call and he says, hey, we serve this industry. It's time for us to double down. How do we help them? right? Like let's put our numbers aside, projections aside. How can we help? What can we do? And they offered their technology for free until dining rooms were open. They were letting people get curbside, install that, have them up and running in 24 hours. Like this kind of innovation and forward leadership, I think it was such a great thing to see. You also saw other campaigns. Sharp Spring did an amazing acceleration series. So speaking of content marketing, right? They could have just put out more white papers, could have put out more blog posts. Instead, they embraced, B2B influencer marketing. They brought in some of the, and I was one of their influencers. So, but even partiality aside, some of my favorite colleagues, Seth Godin was on there, Jay Bear, some amazing marketers that they brought in because they're serving their audience, right? So I think that big question became, for the campaigns that were super successful, how do we serve our audience? Like everything aside, let's make that the sole focus. And I think the brands that did that absolutely had phenomenal success.
Yes, I love that. There's so many good nuggets and little like one-liners from this broadcast already. I want to get, it's B2B, but it's still H to H. Like I need to get that woven on somewhere for the office for sure. Okay, love it. What about let's talk about some of the trends that we think we're going to see next year. So whether the research backed trends or maybe just like some personal opinions, what do you think we're going to see next year, and how can marketers incorporate these into their strategies? Is it going to be like, video still reigns supreme, which wouldn't be a shock to anyone, or is it going to be maybe the notion of like just nurturing the customers that you already have versus this lead gen that always goes after like a new breaking into a new market or a new pool of people? Whoever wants to go first can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about one trend I think we'll see in 2021 is just a continued move to personalized marketing. And I think this is something where a lot of companies have fallen short on ABM in the past, right? I think everybody gets so excited about account-based marketing from a targeting and measurement standpoint, and then they forget about the actual personalization aspect and curating a different experience for those ABM lists. So I think continuing to focus on the personalization and the ABM. And I think there's also an element of ABM that's going to be a little bit new for 2021. I think the challenge of remote work and no longer being able to use IP addresses and cookies necessarily to know what company someone is working for has brought a new layer of complexity to ABM. And I think that that's really stressed the importance of doing ABM correctly, since you can't just turn on IP targeting and say your job is done. And I think that this is something that's been really interesting with LinkedIn, having their logged in user data to report website visits. This is a really exciting potential game changer in the era of remote work. And Metric Theory actually just published our LinkedIn Ads 2021 strategy guidebook, where we talk about some of the trends around ABM and creative in particular. But I think this is top of mind for a lot of folks because things have really changed heading into 2021. We know we want to personalize, but how do we do that? And how do we know who we're talking to?
Right.
So I have like 21 trends that I won't go into, but they're on zenmedia.com. We have a whole, like this, I got crazy one night, and by crazy, I mean like just super excited and hyped up on hot chocolate, and wrote this manifesto myself for B2B marketers. So you guys, if you want to go to zenmedia.com, you can download it off of there. But so I'll give you kind of my highlights or things that I'm really excited about. One, I do think earned media will continue to be a focus because people and brands realize there is this messy middle. We need to be out in the media. We want to be the go-to brand in our industry, right? Like, how can we be top of mind and how can we have the most mind share? Because at the end of the day, and this is the only metric to me, which I'm like, this is the metric that should matter. Mind share equals market share. So Alex, you wanted more little bites. Here you go, right? Your mind share. Your mind share, your thought leadership share, your share of voice equals market share. And this is not just me saying that. Nielsen's done studies on this. Like they, and you look at, I'll give you an example of like Tesla, right? Tesla took away like their PR department because they're already the most talked about auto brand in the world. And you see that because what is the most valued auto brand in the world? Oh, Tesla. Now, even if you remove Elon Musk and all of that from the equation, there's so many marketing nuggets there. I think another trend that we're going to see, and I hope it continues, is B2B influencer marketing, where, you know, your voice may be great and you're putting out this content, but when you are able to leverage other authorities in that sector, and now I'm kind of speaking on both sides because I've done that, you know, I do serve as an influencer for brands that I believe my audience would care about, which is professionals and C-suite and marketers and, you know, and CEOs and leadership. Like, it's a different audience than, you know, an Instagram influencer. So I do, and then on the other side of working with clients and seeing how successful it's been, like Adobe's done a great job leveraging influencers, and they've created this whole influencer circle. A lot of credit goes to Ronnie Money up there, who's been running point on this whole thing. They've built communities. So I hope that B2B continues to build communities, community building being a huge trend. And then, you know, Alex, you mentioned video. Look, we're not, the hybrid model is here for a while. Video is our friend. We need to embrace it, but we do need to be more creative with it, right? And so whether that's leveraging influencers, branded storytelling is so close to my heart. I am just waiting for the right opportunity to do, like, in the B2B sphere, to see someone do an amazing job. Because I don't know, did you guys ever get a chance to watch that Match.com ad where, like, Satan meets the year 2020?
Oh yeah, the worst match. Yeah.
And it's so good. So for those who are watching who haven't seen it, you can go later and check it out. But it's such a creative ad because, you know, Satan's in hell is like scrolling through, he sees this girl, he meets her and he goes, "Are you 2020?" And she goes, "You can call me 2020," right? And then they essentially rain hell on earth. And it's very funny. It's fascinating. You saw KFC just did something with Lifetime with Mario Lopez as the Colonel. Like, even if you think, okay, bizarre, guess what people are talking about? KFC right now, right? And how many people on here are going to have fried chicken for lunch and dinner? I don't that can't be measured, but matter. So anyways, very excited. I'm so excited for 2021, guys. I really am. I just hope that we keep this sort of ethos and excitement going. I think that's going to be really key for marketers to keep their teams engaged and excited with everything that's going on.
Yes, I definitely agree that influencer marketing is gonna be big next year. And I think, you know, it's not just, influencer marketing is not just about you know, making friendlies with outside third-party voices, but I think you can also build internal authorities and showcase your internal personalities, your internal leadership. Your internal leadership starts to build like its own brand externally, and they become like an influencer within their own right. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to get started on an influencer marketing strategy. All right, I want to talk a little bit, this time is flying. I want to talk a little bit about measurement. So we talked before, I know a lot of marketers see measuring brand awareness as somewhat of a pain point, but we all know that you can't have demand gen without brand awareness and thought leadership. So how do marketers measure brand awareness beyond vanity metrics? How can they convince leadership that this is something that they should invest dollars in, even if they don't see closed-won deals within a month?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like we talked about before, I think it's something everyone is trying to answer. And I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all answer. I think it really depends on the company and their customers and what their goals are for the next year. But one metric or one set of metrics that I think that we can look toward is engagement. And I think one of the things that I see as a common pitfall is that, you know, an advertiser will launch some top of funnel metrics, or rather top of funnel efforts, and they'll try to see if it was successful, and they'll deem it unsuccessful because they didn't have strong engagement, or they didn't see the opens or the click-throughs that they wanted. But turns out that they weren't targeting their most engaged audiences. They weren't showing them content or creative that they care about. And so I think that there's a tendency to say, okay, this didn't work for us, let's move on, when really it's much more shades of gray and there's a lot more nuance. And you need to go back to who were we targeting and how did they engage with us and how can we improve on that? And so I think bringing the conversation away from those metrics and back to what do we know, what did we learn about our customers through these efforts, and how can we do better next time? That is one way to start to get traction internally for some of these top of funnel brand awareness efforts, you need to understand what you're putting out there and whether people are reacting to it well.
So one of the things, Alex, that you mentioned was like that idea of like 1 month, right? Of getting like get business in 1 month. One of the things that we look at, one of the metrics, and I find this fascinating, and I'm almost surprised at how many B2B companies and marketers don't measure this, is the length of your sales cycle, right? So when you are branded strongly, when you do have a lot of earned media, when you become sort of that de facto go-to brand where there's a lot of buzz about you, where people trust you, where they feel like, you know, part of marketing is interesting because perception becomes a reality, right? And so that perception that you create, I talk to so many brands, and it's funny, it makes me chuckle sometimes because they'll say, well, you know, we've been around for hundreds of years or whatnot, but you guys, like Zen Media, you guys have a bigger digital footprint than we do. And I think that's funny. And the reason why that's so interesting is because when you do start to increase your digital footprint, what you should find is that you do see these things that matter. Your sales cycle should be a lot shorter because the conversation isn't, wait, who are you? Who sent me these cookies, to Brittany's point, right? Like, you're starting from zero. You're starting from like, tell me, like, you know, who are you? Why should I trust you? And to take that conversation from who are you? Why should I trust you? To, oh, yeah, of course. Like, everybody knows LinkedIn, right? Like, everybody knows, you know, this platform, or yeah, of course I've heard of you guys. Like, okay, so tell me more. Very different conversation. So I also think marketers should get used to separating their ROI into the quantifiable and qualitative. So there's, in academia, which is where I come from, that you do a lot of research and you always look at the quantitative and the qualitative. So the quantitative is stuff that you can measure, and you should. Look, how many leads you get, how much, you know, how many branded searches go up, how many, you know, what's your closing ratio like? All of these things absolutely matter. Then there's the qualitative, and that's the stuff that you can't always put a number to it, but it's like that, you know, that story is telling you about where the CEO gets featured in Forbes, and then all their current customers are, you know, sending him messages saying, oh my God, we saw this, like, congratulations, we hadn't heard about this, or, you know, where you start opening up those doors and conversations again. So there's so much value there, but I don't think that qualitative is often reported. I don't think that, you know, we look at that at all because we're so obsessed with quantitative, and they might not even be great numbers, but it's something. So we think part of the challenge is to let go of, but it's something, to that holistic, okay, what's really moving the needle for us here? You know, how can we do things that are more creative, that get our leadership out there, that tell our story? So I'm gung-ho on this branded storytelling thing, and I really hope that B2B marketers embrace that.
And just to jump in there, Shawna, I think one of the things, going back to the sales and marketing alignment, I think sales teams can actually be really great allies for marketers in that brand storytelling, because the sales team is often the ones that can say, I spoke to this client or this customer, they decided to sign with us. They've been seeing our brand across, you know, this trade show. They saw us on LinkedIn. They saw us on paid search. They heard their executives say this. And so the sales team actually hears from real customers how they interacted with your brand and what they felt about the brand. And then when they relay that to marketing, it gives you insights and it gives you clues as to how people are actually reacting to some of what you're putting out there. So I think that sales and marketing alignment, again, is really important.
Absolutely.
Yes, super, super helpful. Thank you both for diving deep into that. Shawna, you have said before in conversation that most content isn't seen by anyone. Can you talk about what you mean by that and how marketers can change that?
Yeah, because it sucks. You know, we're having a very candid conversation here. Yeah, most content isn't. 99% of the content that you produce is seen by nobody, right? And part of the excuse that people stick to is, yeah, but we're B2B. Like, yes, I get that, right? But I think this is fascinating. So it used to be, and I remember speaking to this one company, a B2B company, and they said, well, listen, we have a website. Our competitor still just has a catalog. So winning, right? Yeah. And it broke my heart to tell them, but to you know, Brittany's point about human to human, but your customers are no longer comparing that buying experience to your competitors. They're comparing it to Amazon's same-day delivery. They're comparing it to, Apple still being able to get you. I got a new MacBook Air. They delivered it within 2 hours to my door. And I was like, oh, okay, they're closed and they're still managing it. So that bar for all of us as consumers is so much higher. And B2B, I think in that way is so much more behind. Part of that is looking at content. And this is, again, where influencers come in. Maybe you need to partner with someone. And Alex, to your point, employee engagement is a great place to start. Look within your own backyard. What talent do you have that you could be better featuring? Who already is a great spokesperson for you that you should be highlighting and giving a podium to? I think this is where, you see a lot of kind of that diversity and inclusion piece come in, right? Who are the voices that in your company that haven't been heard before? Who hasn't gotten a fair chance to really be able to tell their side of the story or to be able to share their perspective of what's going on. So I think this is where most content right now is incredibly boring. It just is. I understand there is a need for technical content at a certain point in the funnel, right? Where someone is challenge aware, they're product aware, they're comparing, great. But I think especially for top of funnel content, and this isn't a word that's used in B2B often, but like sexy, has a little bit of sizzle, has a little bit of excitement, has something that someone goes, oh, that's interesting, right? Raises an eyebrow. Where most of the stuff that you see is so incredibly humdrum. Like it's just not, it doesn't make you pause, it doesn't make you think, and it certainly doesn't make the brand memorable. So I think this is what I mean by content marketing right now is broken, and it's not enough just to say, oh yeah, video, we should get right on that, right? It's important to think about, okay, but what are we doing on video? And you don't have to be a perfectionist. It doesn't have to be this incredible production, right? You might not have all of, for example, LinkedIn's resources to pull everything off, but I certainly think you can still think about the creative aspect, the storytelling aspect, again, what matters to your audience. One of the campaigns that I'm super proud of is, working with Chase Business. What I love about them is that the campaigns that we've done with them, they didn't focus on banking needs. They focused on, we serve small businesses. What do small businesses need? Well, number one on their list was, marketing. How do we market ourselves better? And how do we use technology? So we worked with them to create resources in different formats. There was a whole Bizmobile that went around the country. We moved to digital when COVID happened. But serving your customers to what's their greater goal and creating content around that, that's so key. And most B2B companies do not get that memo.
I 100% agree with that, Shawna. I was going to say, I think another thing that I see happen a lot is content is handed to the marketing team. Here's this content we produced, go push that out there to our networks. When really it needs to be a content strategy. Marketing needs to be part of the conversation up front. Who are we going to be pushing this to? What are their needs and what do they want to see? That needs to be the first conversation rather than an afterthought.
And why would they read it? Why?
Yeah.
Are we paying these people for their time?
Yeah, and marketing is not just a distribution arm, certainly. And it's interesting that you were saying, Shawna, that like B2B can be sexy. Like B2C has been using sexy for a long time. Sexy and B2B isn't kind of like a new conversation, but we have seen, just looking at every year, I look through like some of our top like sponsored content posts, some of our top messaging, all the different ad formats. Like I look at the top performing just to like see what we can learn, and I will share that on the blog eventually. But it's interesting because we've bucketed a lot of the top performers into this like disruptive category. So it is like that content that kind of like makes you raise an eyebrow, or like maybe it seems like not off brand, but just something that's a little bit more playful than what you would typically expect to see from a brand. So I completely agree with that. And I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, please input them into the comments and we will try to get to them towards the end. Just a quick reminder, if you have any burning questions that you'd like us to address at the end. We're going to move into a super fun segment called B2B Marketing Rapid Fire. So everyone get excited. Essentially, I'm going to ask my guests here a series of quick questions ranging from most of them are work related, I will say. And then from there we'll dive into the Q&A. So I'm very excited to hear what some of your answers are to these questions. So maybe we'll just go like Shawna, Brittany, like that you'll answer in that order so that we can with the cadence. So let's start. First one, best marketing book you read in 2020.
Chocolate. Oh wait, no, that wasn't the class. Oh my goodness. Best marketing book that I read in 2020. Seth Godin's book, The Practice.
Good one.
And I will have to say, I don't read a lot with 2 young kids. So instead, I will highlight a podcast that I really enjoyed recently. Freakonomics did a 2-part podcast on Does Advertising Actually Work? And I thought it was fascinating. It was an academic's perspective on TV and digital marketing. I might not have agreed with all of their conclusions, but it was very interesting.
Very cool.
Alex, can you ask us which song we listen to the most? Can you answer that? I feel like Brittany and I might have the same answer.
Okay, most listened to song. Is it Baby Shark?
It's probably Baby Shark, yeah.
Oh, yes. And then there is a hell called Miss Appleberry from Coco Melon. And for all the parents out there, they know what I'm talking about. So.
Okay, next question. What's your go-to blog to keep up with the latest industry news?
You know, I'm totally not being partial, but LinkedIn. I feel like you guys do a great job curating content. It tends to be my sort of #1 source for what people are interested in.
Oh, you're gonna make me blush.
I'm a big fan of search engine land, but also I think I'll do a plug. I think the Metric Theory blog also has a lot of great content on it.
Awesome. What content format will be most popular in 2021?
Video, obviously, but I will add a little bit to that and say video that is native, that works natively for the platform. A really cool tool, just as a side note, is Canva, where you can upload a horizontal video and using their AI technology, it turns it into vertical, automatically detects it. So I think we're going to see more of these great tools that you can use. So you create one content, but then you have sort of massive distribution with that same piece of content.
Love that. I had a similar answer, but I think short form video. I think with the rise of TikTok, people love their 6-second videos. We actually see great engagement with those. So the faster you can get to the point and have a real thumb-stopping video, I think the better.
When do you feel most inspired?
Playing with my giant schnauzer, Georgie.
Love that. I feel most inspired in conversations like this, having an opportunity to speak with other marketers and talk bigger picture. I think that's fantastic. Yeah,
sorry guys, you just don't compare with Georgie and a 90-pound giant schnauzer running at you will clear your mind very quickly.
No offense taken. #1 marketing pet peeve.
This obsession with everything that needs to be measured.
I have very similar answers, Shawna. Mine was when digital channels like paid search and social are held to a higher performance standard than traditional marketing channels like TV and radio. Digital plays a role in brand awareness too.
How do you manage stress and avoid burnout?
My answer to that is like conversations like these. That's weirdly flipped, but it's really nice to know that one, you're not alone, but also to be able to share ideas and to connect with others. And so I guess that's the extrovert in me, but I enjoy that. It's really nice to have conversations that are inspiring, but you also walk away learning something new.
I agree. I love that. And I think another thing that's big is perspective. I think my sister is a nurse, so I feel like that always helps to remind me that it's just marketing. And when I hear about a tough day for her, it's a little different than a tough day for me.
Yeah, we're not saving lives over here. We're just creating good content. Number one skill a good marketer should have.
The ability to pivot based on what they see rather than being stuck on one path. So flexibility.
Yeah.
That's a great one. For me, the thing that comes up is critical thinking. There's really just not as much data available in digital marketing as it might seem. So being able to interpret it and fill in the gaps is really, really important.
Great. And this is the final question. What's the most important career advice you've ever received?
Oh my goodness. The most important career advice that I actually can give. I don't know if I ever received this advice, but I certainly think it's fairly important. And it's kind of simple in its form, but to be nice to everybody that you run across. And I think it's fascinating because you never know where even when you get those sort of cold emails, cold messages on LinkedIn, where it's the temptation is just to be like, like, why are you sending me this? I think it's so important. And to Brittany's point, that perspective, right, is to be, to realize that everyone's doing their best. They're doing, they're walking their path. They're doing the best they can given what they have and where they come from. And I think having that empathy, so perhaps it is empathy, right? To be able to have empathy. And I find that the best leaders, the leaders that really go way up, are the ones that have that. They innately have that, or they've developed it over time. But these are the folks that are, that are genuinely incredibly kind, and they're open to ideas, and they care about what's happening to people around them.
I totally agree with that. Metric theory has 4 core values, and empathy is one of them. So certainly agree that empathy is really important. I think I've gotten a lot of great career advice, but one thing that stands out to me that my manager has helped me really get ingrained is we make the best decisions we can with the information available to us at the time. And I think that's a really good reminder. We're all just trying to make decisions with the information that we have. It's not perfect information, and it's a little bit of a reminder to be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can, and that's really all anyone can ask.
Yeah, I think that comes from Maya Angelou quote, right? You did then what you knew. When you knew better, you did better.
Yep, exactly.
Love that. Okay, so now we're going to move into Q&A. We only have a couple questions left, so we'll take a few here. So let's see here. We'll start with, do you think that companies will keep allocating more budget to digital higher than for traditional, even when the pandemic ends?
Yes, hands down. Because absolutely. I think so. But I think that, again, sort of the question becomes more to Alex, like, how do we define digital, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that digital is the ecosystem. And I think one of the favors we can do ourselves is to kind of stop differentiating like digital and traditional. Maybe there's some languaging there that can work better. But yeah, I think we are now all marketing in the digital age, and that will continue to grow.
Yeah, in some ways, the pandemic just accelerated trends that were already underway. And I think that's an example of one of them. There will always be a place for traditional marketing, but I think we'll continue to see higher investment in digital.
Yeah, I would go even as far to say that like all marketing is digital marketing. Like, I don't know. I can't think of any marketing that I necessarily do that isn't digital, but I also work for a tech company, so whatever. There you go. All right, let's look at another one here. What advice do you have for a recent marketing graduate? This person is graduating this year in terms of skill sets and platforms to master for 2021.
Ooh, that's a great question. Metric theory hires a lot of entry-level folks. We have a great training program, so we get to bring on to our team a lot of people who just finished their college degree in marketing. So I think one piece of advice is look for a company that will invest in you, in teaching you and helping to train you, because there is so much to learn. You can really focus on paid search, you can focus on paid social, and really hone your expertise. So I think look for a place that will really invest in you, and that's going to accelerate your career.
And I'll say it's such a good question. I think it's also to the flip side of what Brittany said. It's very important to invest in yourself, and you always ask about what can you bring to the table, right? So we think so often grads will look at like, okay, what do I get? How do you train me? What not? But the ones that are really successful are the ones that are saying, how can I add value? What can I do? And even if you're completely new to the game, you can outwork everybody else. Like, there's something to be said for hard work. I also have this article that's been quite popular, and it's called "So You Want a Career in Marketing," and you can Google that. It's on Forbes, and I have a bunch of resources in there about how to build sort of your own curriculum as you're growing in the marketing field.
Great. Well, that is all the time that we have for questions. There were a lot more that came in, and we'll do a follow-up blog post, and I'll try to get to more of them then. But that's all the time we have for today. I just wanted to thank our audience for tuning in and being so engaged throughout the broadcast. We hope you learned something today to take back to your team. To keep up with the latest B2B trends, go ahead and please subscribe to our LinkedIn Marketing Solutions blog. And also wanted to mention that we'll send a follow-up email sharing, of course, the recording of this conversation, but also a link to Metric Theory's latest guide to LinkedIn ads, which is newly minted right off the presses. And of course, thank you to our guests, Shawna and Brittany. Thank you so much both for being here and taking the time.
Thanks, Alex. Pleasure to be here. Brittany, please thank your sister for her service right now and everything that she's probably going through and doing for everyone. And if anyone here wants to connect and wants to keep the conversation going, you can find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. I'm happy to keep chatting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Shawna.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. A quick note, the survey is now live within Slido, so please take the time to go ahead, let us know what you thought of the conversation and what kind of conversations that we can tackle in the new year. Our next Live with Marketers is January 28th, and we'll focus on LinkedIn B2B Institute's latest research on B2B creative, so it should be super interesting and helpful. And until next time, I'm Alex Rinn, Senior Content Marketing Manager at LinkedIn, and I hope everyone has a really safe and happy holiday, and we'll see you in the new year.